What if Grandmaster Yoda trained Anakin Skywalker instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi? That's what I want to go over today. I had a good idea for it, so I thought, hey, let's do this. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's get right into it. Our story begins with Grandmaster Yoda pacing in front of the young Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan Kenobi. They'd recently returned from the funeral of Qui-Gon Jinn, and Yoda was saddened by that, along with the fact that his former Padawan, Master Dooku, just informed him that he was leaving the Jedi Order. Two Jedi, two friends, lost to death or the pull away from the Jedi Order. And on top of all of it, the Sith had returned to the galaxy. Sure, one was dead, but deep down Yoda knew that the Zabrak on Naboo was only the apprentice. The Master was still out there. And here, now, in the temple, young Obi-Wan was insisting that he will train Anakin. It was Qui-Gon's final wish, and Kenobi fully intended to honor it. So now Yoda had to make a choice. He could let Obi-Wan train the boy, he could refuse and watch Obi-Wan leave the Order to train the boy, or he could train this boy himself. Yoda sensed Anakin's power, his conflict, affinity for the Force, and it was a real possibility that he was the chosen one. And so Yoda made his decision. As Grand Master of the Order, it will be his responsibility to train this boy. Obi-Wan was shocked, but silently relieved that Anakin would be trained by someone more qualified than him. The young Anakin Skywalker was waiting in a temple training room, watching students younger than him do things he couldn't even imagine that he could do. Moving objects with their mind, blocking blasts from some droid with their eyes covered. Anakin was so focused on them that he didn't even notice Yoda take a seat next to him. Eventually, Yoda spoke to Anakin, saying that he would be trained as a Jedi, and he would be his master. To Anakin, this was great news. In his short time at the temple, everyone raved about how wise and powerful Master Yoda was. His first impression of Yoda in the council was not all that great, but he was looking forward to beginning the training. And soon enough, the training would begin. For 1 year, Anakin and Yoda trained together. Yoda had trained Dooku before this, and Dooku, much like Anakin, was prone to mischief. Yoda saw Dooku leave the Order, and so he decided Anakin would not be like Dooku. So he installed an extremely strict training regimen for Anakin. He also refused to let Anakin bring machines into his room to work on, or hang pod racing posters that he found in Coruscant. Yoda was trying to train Anakin to lose his rebellious personality, mold him into the perfect Jedi, someone he was not. And it was not working for Anakin. At the start, he did enjoy the challenge, but every day Anakin got more and more miserable. He missed his mother, he even missed home. He missed fixing things, he missed himself. Anakin would eventually learn that Dooku left the Order, Yoda's former apprentice, and now it seemed to Anakin like Yoda was trying to turn Anakin into something he's not. Early on, he did exhibit great power in the Force, and on Ilum, he was gifted a lightsaber, but after the year of training, he was just miserable. And so, one morning when his early training was scheduled, Anakin did not show up. Yoda figured Anakin overslept like he sometimes did. The boy was always tired, like he rarely slept, and so Yoda walked to his quarters to find that Anakin was missing. And not only that, but his personal items were gone, except for his lightsaber. Yoda closed his eyes, feeling disappointment in Anakin. Perhaps the boy was not ready to be a Jedi after all. But as his master, Yoda knew he must find him and bring him back. And so he meditated into the Force, searching for Anakin. But down in the underworld of Coruscant, a mini pod racing course had been built, and the citizens looked on as the youngest racer sped around a corner, way ahead of everyone else. The Coruscant crowd cheered as the boy that called himself Annie spun into the finish line, beating everyone. The crowd had grown fond of Annie, though no one knew where he came from, but around once per week, he would come down here at night and begin racing, and winning. But today was different. Annie came down here at night and stayed through the morning. He decided he was done with the Jedi. He didn't think Yoda actually cared for him, so he resorted to what made him happy, racing and building things. And as this race finished, Anakin was being cheered on when he looked through the crowd to see Yoda. Anakin sifted through the crowd to find his master waiting for him, disappointed. Anakin didn't ask how he was found. He just told Yoda he was tired of being a Jedi. He told the Grand Master that he thought being a Jedi was about protecting people, helping people. But to him, the Jedi only seemed to care about the senators, the Republic elites. He told Yoda to look around. These people down here were miserable, suffering, and the Jedi were nowhere to be found. They were all up in their temple. This surprised Yoda. He expected Anakin to just be bored or not ready to be a Jedi, but his heart was in exactly the right place. Perhaps he was right. Truly wonderful, the mind of a child is, thought Yoda. The Jedi have become complacent, too focused on politics, and it took a boy from slavery in the Outer Rim to remind Yoda of what the Jedi are truly meant to do. And so Anakin would return to the temple, while Yoda decided things must change. For the next year, the Jedi Order would begin to restructure. Yoda spoke with the Jedi Council, and they all agreed that perhaps they were not doing their duty to the citizens of the galaxy. Over this year, the Jedi Order would split into two main groups. Yoda led half of the Jedi out into the Outer Rim, where they would build upon an old Jedi outpost on the planet Elforna. These Jedi in the Outer Rim would serve as true protectors of the peace, helping out the people. And Yoda guided these roughly 5,000 Jedi out here, while Mace Windu was the leader of the 5,000 of the group that was more focused on being protectors of the Republic. The Order was still one big group, but with more influence across the galaxy. Yoda would take Anakin out here, and the training between the two of them would be much different. Yoda would begin taking Anakin on missions very early on, where they would free slaves, get in the way of crime lord drug trafficking. Anakin was much easier to train in the field, seeing how his training was being directly translated, and after a year or so, he and Yoda even freed his mother. Anakin was happier, the Jedi Order as a whole was happier, getting back to what they were meant to be. The galaxy was seeing the Jedi as heroes again, rather than a Senate police force, and everyone was pleased. Almost everyone. Chancellor Palpatine, secretly Darth Sidious, was rather outraged by this. His plan was centered around the Jedi being hated by the galaxy, but every day they were more and more loved. Something had gone wrong, and for this entire year, he had no contact with Anakin. For the first year that Anakin was training, Palpatine was manipulating him. By showing him how unhappy the galaxy was, he was planting seeds that the Jedi Order was more interested in themselves than the people, and Anakin was believing it. But the Jedi had changed course, and now he needed a new way to bring them down and to get to Anakin. So he began using Sith alchemy to speak to Anakin through dreams, not saying who it was speaking to him, planting seeds of darkness inside of him. For the next 5 years, the Jedi would continue to evolve into being both protectors of the galaxy and the Republic, while Yoda and Anakin would continue their training. Every day, the two of them got closer and closer, as Anakin showed Yoda that in order for him to become a great Jedi, he still had to be himself. Yoda trained Anakin while allowing to do what made him happy. On some days, while some Jedi were using their powers to stop crime, Anakin would be helping out a local repair shop, using his expertise in machines to find peace within himself. This gave time for Yoda to go to council meetings and fulfill his duties as Grand Master. Anakin just needed space sometimes. The two of them were great for each other. Everything seemed to be working well, master and apprentice, and they were both friends with each other. But Yoda was also still learning through all of this. This was new to him as well, and in letting Anakin have freedom in training, the boy was left open to the darkness that was silently beginning to rise in the galaxy. Anakin began having dreams where a voice would come to him, using his insecurities and his fears against him. The voice would terrify Anakin, then comfort him, claiming Anakin could not survive without this voice. It claimed that Anakin was born from the darkness, telling him his destiny was not with the Jedi. Every time Anakin woke up, he wanted to tell Yoda, but part of him was fond of the voice. Part of him believed that if Yoda found out, then his training would go back to the temple on Coruscant, and he did not want that. He liked it out here, helping the people. And so for these 5 years, Anakin would train with Yoda in the Outer Rim outpost and become very strong. At 18 years old, he could match up with almost any Jedi in a sparring match, but in the training, Yoda would sometimes notice that Anakin would show subtle signs of darkness, like something was pulling at him, encouraging him to use the darkness. So one night, as Anakin slept, Yoda meditated nearby, feeling the force around him. He did this all night, and after a few hours, a dark cloud seemed to surround Anakin. Yoda centered himself on it now, and he could hear whispers, he could feel darkness, and inside of Anakin, Yoda could feel that the boy had become infected. Tendrils of darkness surrounded him. He was too distracted with his duties as Grand Master to notice them. And so the next morning, Yoda did not ask Anakin about it. Instead, he sat in on a council meeting, telling everyone he was stepping down as Grand Master. It was time for someone new to take his place, and the council decided it was best that Plo Koon become Grand Master of the Order. Yoda stepped down, focusing everything he had on training Anakin. And so Yoda began teaching him about the dark side, the dangers of it, giving Anakin the chance to tell Yoda about his dreams by himself. For a couple weeks, the two trained together again, as Yoda taught Anakin why the Jedi refuse to touch the dark side. It's like an infection that kills whatever it touches. And soon enough, Anakin gathered the courage to tell Yoda about his dreams. Anakin described them as comforting, but frightening voice that would come to him and say he would lose everything if he did not listen to it. The voice would tell Anakin that his destiny lies in the dark side. Yoda soon realized the only way to end these dreams was to eradicate the source they were coming from. This had to be the Sith Lord, and so that very night, Yoda gave instructions to Anakin. Listen for the voice, find the voice, locate it. Yoda put his trust in Anakin, and soon the boy fell asleep. When the voice did come to him, Anakin spoke back, saying he was tired of the Jedi. He wants to rid himself of the light and find the darkness within himself. And finally, the voice showed Anakin a location. It was the inside of some abandoned building overlooking the industrial sector of Coruscant, and Anakin woke up to the sound of evil laughter echoing in his head. Yoda approached Anakin, and he learned of where the Sith Lord seemed to be hiding. So the next morning, Yoda and Anakin took off alone to the location that Anakin saw in his dreams. They had to go alone in order for the Sith to not sense the Jedi. Yoda was very good at masking himself in the Force, but many Jedi would not be able to do it. The Sith would escape before they even got close. So as they approached the potential Sith lair as master and apprentice, Yoda warned Anakin that the Sith were definitely not to be taken lightly. They were powerful. The two of them soon landed, and Anakin walked out of the ship alone. After a moment, a hooded man turned from around the corner, greeting young Skywalker, thanking him for finally taking the right path. But Anakin had the Sith right where he wanted him, saying this was a trap, as Yoda began walking down the ramp. The Sith Lord smiled underneath his hood, and Anakin felt a cold chill run down his back. Sidious had expected this. He'd expected something. He would not take chances with Anakin all alone. He had his own apprentice ready for a trap. And out of the corner, suddenly, lightning erupted, and Yoda was slammed into the wall. A red blade ignited, and out from that corner walked Dooku. Yoda looked at him with a great sadness. His former apprentice has fallen so far, something he was not letting happen to Anakin. And Yoda said, "Failed you, I have, Dooku." And the Grand Master said that Dooku was right about the Jedi, but they have become better, while he has fallen down a terrible, dark path. Dooku himself was actually very conflicted. Because the Jedi Order had changed so much since he left, becoming what the galaxy truly needed, he wasn't sure if the dark side was the true path for him. He was trusting in the Force today, to show him what he must do. There was very little momentum for the Separatist Alliance, and things were moving slowly, so it all depended on what happens today. He was sure the Force would show him the right path. Yoda and Anakin ignited their lightsabers, and Yoda looked to the hooded Sith Lord as he spun in the air towards the Grand Master. Suddenly, Yoda was flipping through the air in a great duel as Skywalker turned to face Dooku. The powerful Chosen One moved for Dooku, and their blades clashed against each other, the red and blue hues illuminating the dark surroundings, casting glimpses of the ancient Sith artifacts against the wall. The clash of their lightsabers reverberated against the cold, stone surfaces, as Anakin, fueled by the intensity of his emotions, pressed the attack against the calculated and very composed Dooku. They moved across the room, as Dooku was sizing up his opponent. Anakin was extremely powerful, but Dooku could unbalance him. Simultaneously, on the other side of the room, Yoda battled Sidious. The room crackled with the dark side of the Force as Yoda countered Sidious's powerful strikes. His agility and acrobatics were a stark contrast to Sidious's deceptive moves, and the Force itself seemed to quake with the magnitude of their confrontation. As lightsaber clashes intensified, the two battles were reaching their peak. On the other end, Dooku spent time taunting Anakin, finally disarming him, sending the lightsaber to the ground. Anakin could spar with many Jedi, but he'd never faced a Sith, and Dooku spun for the kill. But he stopped right before the lightsaber cut through Skywalker. Anakin was on the ground, looking up in fear, but all Dooku saw now in his eyes was himself in the past. Anakin had become what Dooku always wanted to be, a hero, not just for the Jedi, but for the galaxy. And this moment, where he could have killed Anakin, actually gave Dooku the clarity that he needed. He sighed, finally seeing the truth. The Jedi had become good for the galaxy, and it was the Sith who were poisoning it. Dooku wanted the galaxy to see peace, and he thought the Jedi would stand in the way. He was wrong. Anakin had helped change things. So Dooku called Anakin's lightsaber to him with the Force, giving it back to him, and telling Anakin it's time he fulfill his destiny. Sidious and Yoda had moved their fight to the balcony, overlooking an entire sector as the red glow shone down on them. Yoda was beginning to get worn down as he deflected lightning strikes again and again. Eventually, he was hit with one, slamming to the ground, and the Sith Lord lifted him up with the Force, was about to snap his neck when a blue blade emerged from Sidious's chest. Palpatine immediately realized that Dooku had either betrayed him or he'd lost to Anakin, and he fell dead as Yoda was dropped to the ground. The Jedi removed the hood of the Sith, seeing the face of Palpatine. To both of them, this was of course a great surprise, but not one that was completely unexpected. They now realized why Palpatine was so interested in Anakin from the start, and how he had infiltrated Anakin's dreams. They had a connection, and Anakin could feel the dark cloud that surrounded him fade as the Sith Lord died. Yoda asked about Dooku as his ship flew away, and Anakin said Dooku would no longer be any danger. He seems to have found himself in peace. From here, the Republic would begin to reshape itself as Yoda, Anakin, and Windu described the truth about Palpatine to the Senate. In time, they would elect a new Chancellor, and corruption in the Senate would begin to dissipate. Around a month after Palpatine died, the Jedi were contacted by a mysterious source on a remote planet called Kamino, and Yoda, Anakin, and Obi-Wan were dispatched to investigate. This was their first mission together between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Yoda noted how well the two got along with each other. There was sarcastic banter between the two, and Yoda could only wonder how the galaxy would have turned out had Obi-Wan trained Anakin. The Jedi soon discovered a clone army with around 200,000 units ready to go, and they decided to shut down the program, but allow the 200,000 units to serve as the Republic military or police force should the Republic allow it. After the scare of Palpatine, the Republic took over the clones, and this allowed the Jedi to step away from the Republic even more. Over time, the Jedi would expand their reach in the galaxy, with 9,000 of them away from Coruscant, while Windu led the remaining 1,000 Jedi on Coruscant. Throughout the galaxy, Jedi were keeping the peace, trying to make the galaxy better for the citizens who could not do much for themselves. And after 20 more years of peace, Grand Master Yoda passed on to the Force, while Anakin, now an official council member, thanked him for everything. Because of Yoda, and because of how the Jedi changed, Anakin became the Jedi he was always meant to be. Folks, that's where our story ends today. I really like this one. I wanted to do one involving Yoda and Anakin. I always like going over their kind of relationship, and I've usually done Yoda-Anakin videos kind of in the Clone Wars or in Revenge of the Sith, so it was nice to take this approach, and I wanted to separate it from the Clone Wars, from Order 66, kind of have things end before then, and in order to do that, I kind of did a parallel to Sidious or Snoke with Ben Solo from The Last Jedi, or I guess prior, where, Snoke was infiltrating Ben Solo's brain with dreams, so I wanted to do the same here with Sidious and Anakin. And Anakin kind of figuring it out, feeling the darkness, and in the end, Yoda talking to him about it. I also wanted to do something where Anakin kind of teaches Yoda, right? So when he almost leaves the Order at the beginning of this video, Yoda doesn't understand why. Why would anyone want to do that? But Anakin shows him what the Jedi are missing, how they've become complacent, how the Republic citizens underneath Coruscant are all suffering, while the Jedi in the temple just kind of sitting there in their council. So I wanted to just have him show Yoda that there was more to the galaxy. Yeah, I like that idea of Anakin also teaching Yoda as a child, so let me know what you guys thought. I really did enjoy this one quite a bit, hope you did as well. And yeah, a bit of a shorter one, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.